It wasn't my past self who saved her. It was me. Right here. Right now.
After viewing this scene and experiencing the end of the quest, I know a lot of you guys have some questions. And for those who don't know, we're talking about Wuthering Waves Chapter 3, Act 3. It left a lot of people with a lot of thoughts. Now, I'm not gonna lie and say I have the answer to all of your questions, but I think we can find a little bit of solace and perhaps some answers by reviewing this act and some of the events leading up to it. By the way, this video is brought to you by Kuro Games. That being said, let's get it. So long ago, from a planet far away, came Rover, sent to Solaris 3 with the purpose of saving the world. Now, why are they saving the world? How did they know the world is in danger? Perhaps Rover's homeland had something to do with it being in this state. Of course, we don't know any of this for sure, and we'll save that for a potential theory video. But for now, let's just stick to the facts. So Rover came to Solaris along with a bunch of supporting ships, but these ships were in the form of mechs. And these mechs housed the Sentinels. These mechs were called Exostriders. Now, as they're traveling to Solaris 3, one of them is spotted by a being called LF1. LF1 is the Trinodian of Lahairoi, and it takes the form of a black hole. Now, LF1 in this particular Exostrider, they began to battle it out, and they're going head to head, but eventually their battle results in them tearing through the Strider Gate. Now, what is the Strider Gate? Well, they do give us a kind of explanation of what the Strider Gate is, but I'll simplify it by telling you what I think it is. The Strider Gate is a hole in the atmosphere of Solaris 3 that separates Solaris 3 from space. And this hole was created by the Exostrider and the Trinodian in this battle. Now, we don't really know what's up with Solaris' atmosphere. Why can't things travel to and from space? Why do they need this entry and exit point? So far, this hasn't really been explained, but this is just what we know right now. They tear through the Strider Gate, and this Strider Gate is the only thing keeping all of LF1 from coming into and consuming all of Solaris 3. The Exostrider jams its greatsword into the Strider Gate, pinning down the Trinodian and sealing the entrance in the process. But this entire time, the Exostrider is weakening, and eventually its strength is going to give out, until suddenly it's revitalized by a spark of power. And with this power, it uses its greatsword to completely push out LF1 and seal the entrance to the Strider Gate. Now, where did this spark of power come from? Why and how did all this happen? Well, we'll get to that. So eventually, there was a girl named Imith. She was born to an indigenous Roya and a space trek researcher. Well, one day when they're out, a void storm strikes. And for those who don't know, void storms are essentially energy from the Trinodian that flares up and creates all types of calamities. So anyway, a void storm flares up and her parents are killed. Now, at this point, Imith is so young that looking back now, she can't even remember what her parents looked like. Nonetheless, at this time, she began to run, and she ran away. She ran away from the danger, from the pain, from the sadness, until she ended up in the Frostlands. And she knew that her parents had a home there, but she couldn't exactly remember where it was. So she continued to press forward until she found what she thought was her parents' home. But as she began to approach it, a strong gust of wind blew her off course, and she landed into an icy lake. And luckily enough, Rover just happened to be in the area. Rover dives in after her. The talisman that her parents gave her floats away, but Rover is able to grab Imith, and he lifts her to the surface and saves her. And from this point forward, Rover and Imith essentially have a parent-daughter-like relationship, where Rover tells her right from wrong, how to be studious, telling her to do her homework, and plays with her. But this particular version of Rover isn't the same version of Rover we know today. While Rover was pretty cheerful and chill, especially towards Imeth, Rover in general was a more sad and brooding person, and we'll find out why a little bit later. But essentially, Imeth asks her, "Hey yo, what's up? Why are you like this?" And Rover eventually breaks and tells her that they're from a very far away land and they can essentially never go back. They've been sent to Solaris 3, tasked with saving the world. And at this point, Rover would frequently come back with bruises and scrapes because they were doing just that, saving the world. Well, eventually the time came for Rover to go to an entirely new place, a new area, to continue to save the world. And Rover had to leave Ameth. Of course, we know that Rover would eventually erase their memories, so they don't really have any recollection of this. But in the meantime, in between time, Ameth gets older and she becomes a synchronist at Star Torch Academy. And for those who don't know, a synchronist is a person who trains to become a resonator of the Exostrider. And that's exactly what she was doing, and pretty successful at it too. Her training wasn't yet complete, but her ability to resonate had gotten stronger and stronger, until about 10 years ago, where on a fateful day, she disappeared. Ameth vanished during a piloting drill. So what actually happened? Well, deep underground, there was a seal, the seal that closes the Strider Gate. It was broken, and LF1 was about to emerge and swallow all of Lahairoi. Ameth overclocks, resonates with the Exostrider, but as a result, she dies, and she becomes a digital ghost, and her frequency would be forever tied to the Exostrider, specifically the Exostrider's reactor core. So fast forwarding further, we end up in a place called Honami. And in Honami, we find out we have a connection to Lahairoi. And not only that, but we discovered that we were a student there. And our frequency has been weakening and weakening. And conveniently, a rift has emerged. And this rift is thought to lead directly to Lahairoi. Well, the Black Shores work to stabilize this rift to allow us to be able to travel through it, to be able to send Chisa back, as well as to go back ourselves. And before we head back, the radio comes on and it plays a message. This message, we hear a voice. A woman speaks. She says, "The universe has rejected us. Is this the answer you've been seeking, Rover? I hope to make you proud. I hope I haven't let you down." Now, this voice is Ameth. But what does all of this mean? Don't worry, we'll get to it. So at this point, Rover's frequency was mysteriously being drained little by little. So we decided to go through this rift. And as we go through, we come face to face with LF1. But Ameth emerges and saves us, and she boops us on the nose. And so when we finally arrive in Lahairoi, we arrive just in time for people to be talking about the new solar ceremony. And this ceremony is meant to celebrate the changing of the sun. Lahairoi is a civilization that is deep underground, and they have an artificial sky and an artificial sun. Now, at the time of our arrival, the sun that's present there is a sun that is the reactor drive of the Exostrider, and they're celebrating this change to their own man-made sun. Of course, during this process, we end up meeting Lene, Mornier, and Luke Herson. Mornier and Luke Herson seem to have a link to our past. But of course, we discover the Fractures plot, and they continue with the plan of changing out this sun. During this change, something goes wrong. Nonetheless, the change still happens. As a result, the reactor drive crashes to the ground, and the reactor core is rescued. And Rover is carrying this reactor core with him. Because Imeth is deeply connected to the Exostrider, the reactor core essentially being her heart, we are able to see Imeth, whereas other people cannot. And so while we're in class, we end up meeting her face to face and having a conversation. And we say thank you to her for saving us from LF1 earlier on in the story. But Imeth at this point has no memory of that. She's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And there's a reason for that too. We'll get to that as well. It'll all make sense by the time we get to the end. And so, as we go out to talk to Imeth, a machine known as Sigillum emerges and it attacks. And for some reason, it has something against us and Imeth being in connection. And it continuously tries to attack us at different points throughout the story. As the story unfolds, Imeth reminds us. She tells us about our past, how we're connected, the time we shared together, and basically how she became who she is, and why she's so fixated on saving the world. Is deeper than just her emulating and admiring us. It's because she truly and deeply cares. Not just about the world, but about Rover. And we find all of this out while we're fighting Sigillum. During this battle, Sigillum's mask cracks. And what do we see? Our own faces. Sigillum is us. We are Sigillum. But who really is Sigillum? So after Sigillum's mask cracks, we enter into Imeth's mindscape, where we're able to essentially see the things of the past and see how things unfolded. And after this, Imeth tells us everything that happened. She tells us that while she's a digital ghost, she can do things that regular people just can't do. And one of those things is travel into void space. Now, void space is the energy around LF1, and this space is very unstable, and it houses things from all types of timelines, things that normally wouldn't be close to each other at all, things that might have happened decades or even centuries apart might be just right next to each other. And so as she's traveling through void space, she senses us and she finds a piece of our frequency. And so she holds onto this frequency because we're really the only family she knew. But that's not the only thing she finds. As she continues to travel through void space, she essentially finds a comm link. And this comm link has stored messages. And the messages are between Rover and Rover's homeland. And Rover is distraught, disheveled, just torn apart as they're talking to people from their homeland. And I think this is illustrated by how they paint Rover. They paint him curled up in a fetal position, almost like a child. And I think this is to represent just how distraught Rover is as Rover is talking about going home. And Rover repeatedly sends messages saying, hey, at least let me come home, at least to see the place. Even if I don't stay, just let me see the land, the people, the places of my homeland. And they straight up tell Rover no. And not only do they tell Rover no, they completely cut off communication. And as Imeth sees this, she's filled with a bunch of different emotions. She's infuriated that someone would even treat the only family she knows in such a dismissive and callous manner. At the same time, her heart breaks and she's torn apart, hearing us in such a vulnerable state. All these negative emotions combines with the frequency of Rover that she found to create Sigillum. By the way, going back, when she says the universe rejected us, this is what she was talking about. She was talking about Rover's homeland essentially rejecting Rover. And at this point, she not only wants to save the world, she wants to save us from the sadness we once knew. So we no longer have to worry about saving the world. After this, we essentially reconcile with Sigillum. Sigillum had been the one who had been absorbing our frequency. Sigillum had been singular-minded and going home, and it wanted to absorb our frequency to become whole, to fulfill its mission of returning home, because essentially it was born from this emotion. But after reconciling, we're able to absorb Sigillum and absorb all of our frequency back into ourselves. So after all of this happens, the day is essentially saved, or to a degree. It's peak void storm season. All types of void storms are popping off, but apparently this is normal for a particular time of year in La Haroi. Nonetheless, Rover and Imeth head back to Star Torch Academy. Imeth goes and meets with her fans, people that have fallen in love with her music, but after all of this, Rover and Imeth have a time where they just sit aside. She tells Rover to relax, to rest. to just chill and close their eyes because they don't have anything to worry about with her around. And so Rover does. She does this because she's made up her mind to follow in the footsteps of Rover and put everyone else above herself. She's made peace with the idea of sacrificing herself to save not only Rover, but all of Lahairoi. Because while traveling through void space, she did find Rover's frequency. She did find that comlink, but she also found something else. Imith found a message left to her by herself from the future. And this message is all about finally defeating LF1 and removing them from Lahairoi. This message, while from the future, is essentially what happened in the past. Remember, long ago, how the Exostrider was found by LF1 and how they battled and crashed through the Strider Gate? Remember how the Exostrider pinned down LF1 through the Strider Gate, but their power was weakening? Well, that spark of power was Imith, and Imith is in a time loop where she is that spark of power. So Imith plans to go into void space, into the past, to perform this action to save the world. And Rover sees this and Rover's torn apart. Rover's like, wait a minute, we gotta stop this. There has to be some other way. But Imith has made up her mind. Rover doesn't have to save the world this time, because she will. She says, just like you taught me, my pain is no different from anyone else's. She knows how much of a burden saving the world is to Rover, how heavy it weighs on him. So this time, she's planning to dive into void space to take this action. Rover, in an effort to stop her from doing this, dives into void space. But Rover can't really dive into void space like this because he's not a digital ghost. It actually hurts him. It actually pulls away his frequency. And as he dives in to save her, this time he's unable to get to her. He can't pull up Imith. The only thing he's able to grasp is her talisman, the same talisman that she lost. However, it's with this talisman that she's able to be revived. Because if you know anything about the world of Solaris 3 and Wuthering Waves, you know it's all about frequencies. And so a trace of her frequency is in this talisman. And this was used as a way to manifest Imith into the world, into the present. However, of course, we know that Imith is outside of the Strider Gate. She is forced out LF1 and she's essentially lost forever. This frequency allowed her to be recreated as a shell of her former self. And Luke tells us, hey man, don't expect too much. However, Rover vows to somehow return her to her former glory. So what does this mean for the story of Wuthering Waves? Will Rover be able to revitalize her and bring her back to who she was? I'm pretty sure that's probably gonna happen. But it does feel good to actually feel like these decisions and these circumstances are weighted. And what does this mean for Lahairoi? Of course, the Nodian can't be fully destroyed, but are they truly out of the picture for now? I don't know. But I'm looking forward to find out. Not to mention, this story gives a whole new meaning to that daily quest. Save the world, save the cat. Because in Imith's metaphor, that cat is Rover. But anyways, folks, that is all I have for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I'll catch you in the waves. Peace.